Welcome back, crew. Do you remember lesson 4 on clones? Well, this is lesson 4.5, which is an addendum to lesson 4. So if you take a moment to harken back to the old days of lesson 4 when we were introduced to Dolly the clone, you might remember that she was high risk to spontaneous combustion. Well, in the 1990s we all were. So today we're going to make a fire extinguisher to save her if she flames up. And that's what we're going to do. Okay, you guys know what to do here. You start by searching for my projects, because that's going to be the starter project. So search for T. Skolnick, T-S-K-O-L-N-I-C-K. And then once you're in there, you choose the Dolly costume project, and then you hit remix, and that will make it your very own project. By the way, did you know that Skolnick in Russian means schoolboy? But in French, it means great warrior who honors his ancestors and is not a schoolboy at all. Okay, let's start simply. We'll get warmed up because we don't want to pull a muscle and be sidelined for the rest of the season. So first, we're going to start by just hiding all the sprites that are not Dolly. So we'll select each sprite and then click the hide sprite icon so that we're left with just Dolly, and we're going to have her glance around just a little bit. Now, if you notice, Dolly's got two costumes, and the only way that they differ is the position of the eyes, so she can glance around. To start, we'll do what we always do and react to the green flag, the go button. So once somebody clicks go, we're going to use the forever loop from the control blocks. So once we have the forever loop out there, we're going to switch costumes on each iteration, and all you have to really do here is say next costume, because since there are only two, it's going to go from costume 1 to costume 2, from 2 back to 1, from 1 to 2. We just need to remember to put a little weight in there, or else it's going to go too fast and you won't see the costume switch. So for starters, I'm just going to put 1 second so we can see the glancing. And once we see it working, like that, we'll change it. And I'm going to change it to 8 seconds because 8 seconds is how long it takes a real sheep to glance around. Now that Dolly is all squared away, it's time to turn our attention to the other sprites, and we'll get back into cloning, and we will see that with the fire extinguisher. All right, let's fill the fire extinguisher with some code now. Step 1 is you click on it, make it visible. Step 2, I'm going to tell the fire extinguisher to go to the front layer whenever go is clicked. I just said layer, and we never talked about layers. Well, let's go on a tangent, and we'll talk about layers. So imagine the stage is really made up of layers of glass. And a sprite is on one of those layers. And if you don't like the one it's on, because some other sprite got in your way, it's in front of you, you fix that by telling the sprite to go to the front layer. Psst, if you just click a command inside the sprite, it just runs it right then. Just do that. You can also send your sprite to the back if you like. Enough about layers, because what I want to have is I want the fire extinguisher to tell the clouds that are made out of fire extinguisher chemicals to spray out when the fire extinguisher is clicked. We will broadcast a message from the extinguisher that says spray when we are clicked. Crud, I mentioned broadcasting, so it's time for another tangent. The word tangent comes from the ancient Latin tangentius enchentium. Wait, what is broadcasting? Well, imagine that you have two sprites that are standing in an alley somewhere in your neighborhood, and you want them to do something. You would yell, "Do something!" But maybe they're not listening, so they do a whole lot of nothing. But what if one starts listening for the words, "Do something!" Like actually cups their hand to their ear so they're really listening. And then when you yell, "Do something," that sprite crouches down as it's something. But the other sprite was just standing there, wasn't listening. Just wasn't listening at all, which is typical of that other sprite. Now, what if both sprites start listening? Then will they both crouch down when I yell "do something"? Nah, they can do whatever they want. Be your own sprite. If they listen for the message that says "do something," then the right one is a croucher. That sprite is going to crouch, and the left one is going to cover its eyes and then disappear, because that's what happens when you cover your eyes. You can try it. You disappear. It's science. How could we have gotten this far into the video without doing any cloning? So for Dolly's sake, let's fix that. Let us turn our attention to our little cloud sprite, just like the song Send in the Clouds. So first, we want to make the cloud hide at the start of the program, since it's going to show once we click the fire extinguisher. But we don't want it to show right away. So now, remember we did that lesson on angles last time, and you said how life-changing it was? Well, here we're just going to adjust the angle of the cloud so it points at Dolly. And I have to do this little dance where I adjust the angle, and then I'm going to double click. That will run this event, but the first thing the event does is hides the cloud, so I can't really see if my angle was good. So I'm going to click the unhide thing. In the end, 120 degrees is the perfect number for the cloud to point at Dolly. Let's get back to listening for the spray message. When it comes in, we're going to create 30 clones of ourselves in rapid succession. Clone, 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 clone. We're going to do that we're just going to make a repeat loop, and in each iteration, we'll create a clone, but then we'll wait just a little split second so that there's some spacing between the clouds. Once each clone wakes up, it needs to rush toward Dolly to play its part as a member of the cloud stream. And sometimes it's not about the individual, but it's about the group. So now, once we start as a clone, we need to show ourselves. Once we show ourselves, we're going to create a loop that iterates 30 times, and each time we're going to move 20 steps. We'll wait just a tiny bit like we always do, otherwise, it goes too fast, and we'll see the cloud racing toward Dolly. Now don't forget, you have to delete the clone at the end, because otherwise these clones, they're going to accumulate in memory, and Scratch will eventually say, no more. It will refuse to create any more clones. And, there's a limit. It's just like my mom used to say, waste not, clone not. All right, see that is one narrow ding-dang stream. So let's fix that by having just a bit of variability in the direction that each cloud heads. So, so they spray out, so there's some dispersion. We do this just by having the cloud turn a small amount from its original 120 degree heading. We just make a random number from -10 to +10 and say turn by that much. If it's negative, it's going to rotate counterclockwise a little bit. If it's positive, clockwise a little bit. Let's say it came out to 3 was your random number. It will head off in direction 123 degrees. There you go. Authentic spray. Okay, let's do just one more thing. Let's just have the clouds, we'll have them fade as they spray, so that after each step, we're going to use the ghost effect so they become just a little bit more transparent. So we'll increase the ghostliness by 5 each iteration. Though I don't believe in ghosts myself, I am afraid of them. Okay, guys, let's turn our attention to the flame. On the Go event, we're going to send our flame sprite to the back layer because I want it to be behind Dolly. And then we're just going to wait for 3 seconds before she combusts. And for good measure, what I'm going to do is I'll make sure that we can see the flame, so I'm going to toss the show block in next. Of course, because it's behind Dolly, we're only going to see the top part of the flame, that's exactly what I want. Okay, so you know how real flames, they grow and they shrink, and we're going to kind of mimic that with the forever loop. What we'll do is we'll have the flame grow by 10 using the change size, but then we'll use an if block to check to see if it's gotten bigger than 100% using that size attribute from the looks category and the greater than operator block. If it's bigger than 100%, we'll set the size back to 80%. Then the next time around, it'll grow again until it's above 100%, and then it gets set back to 80, and so you'll just see it growing and shrinking. Oh, now when you go to implement this stuff yourself, you might forget where I found that size attribute of the sprite. But you can see the categories, they're all color-coded. The size attribute is purple, then you know what was in the purple category. And there you have it. Brilliant. I met this guy once, and he was a paratrooper. He was entirely colorblind, but he was in the military, and he was he had to jump out of the airplanes. They had these flares that they put on the ground. There was a red one and a green one, and that would guide the paratrooper for where to land. And he couldn't tell the difference at all. He'd jump out of the plane. He couldn't see the difference at all. And I was like, what did you do? And he said, I just made sure I wasn't the first one to jump out. Yeah, he had a good career until the incident. Besides the growing and shrinking, I've got 2 costumes for the flame, and that's going to help the flicker look. And so we're also going to switch from one costume to the next, just by saying next costume, because it'll go from costume 1 to costume 2, then from costume 2 back to costume 1, all just by saying next costume. We'll do the usual. We do that little bit of weight somewhere in the loop so that you have time, your eye has time to absorb each costume. I did forget one thing. I don't want Dolly to be on fire right away. I don't want her to just combust. So that's why I have that 3-second wait at the beginning. So I'm going to put a little hide in there right away when the program starts so that she's not on fire immediately. It waits 3 seconds and then it turns out that Billy Joel was wrong. We did start the fire. So let's put it out by broadcasting the message that says, "Done spray," at the end of the spray sequence in the extinguisher. Now, back in the flame sprite, when we receive that "done spray" message, we can just hide ourselves. So it looks like the flame went out. And then we can just wait for 3 seconds and use that show block so that the flame comes back. What's worth noting is all the while, the forever loop that's over there on the left, that forever loop that we wrote before, it keeps on running, and it keeps that eternal flame flickering, even when it's hidden. Now, you know what's next? Nothing. We did it. We're done. We have nothing more to prove. I just want to say, thanks as always for watching, and I did enjoy making this video for you guys, and stay well. I'll see you next time.